Shalwan Arkiam Shalwan. First and foremost, all the higher praise, honor, glory to Hawa Shmi Awashai, Hashem Kakadash, and this bitch Alicia Keys on the screen. But yeah, sing honors to the apostles of the great millstone, and like minded, and double honors, sing honors to all the apostles, elders of great millstone. Double honors to the elders, sing honors to the apostles of the great millstone, like minded camps. I mean, Salakia Khan. And in this lesson, we're going to get into okay, I spoke briefly on this in my last video, just to give you a more on China, speak more a bit more on China here. Taiwan reports large-scale Chinese military aircraft presence near islands. The Defense Ministry detected 26 Chinese military aircraft around the island yesterday. God. And you got this video, well, this was yesterday, why Sweden is becoming a defense powerhouse as Europe rearms. More of NATO preparing for war. We take a look at how Saab and Sweden's border defense ecosystem have become central to Europe's rearmament.
When you think of Sweden, you might picture snow-covered streets, minimalist design, maybe even IKEA or ABBA. Defense manufacturing probably isn't the first thing that comes to mind, but maybe it should be. Here at Saab, production has been ramping up. The company reported record orders on the books, and it's not just fighter jets. Saab builds everything from missiles and radar to surveillance systems and naval platforms, capabilities few countries sustain domestically. CEO Michael Johansson describes the magnitude of the new demand.
I think if I look at our company, we have probably 4 to 5 folded output for like before the war started. So lots is happening, and I think we are underestimating the capacity of the European defense industry.
For a country of just 10 million people, that's significant. But the phenomenon is not uniquely Swedish. European defense company stocks are surging, with other major players like Rheinmetall and Leonardo reporting record years along with Saab. 4 years into the war in Ukraine, the demand driving those record numbers is no longer just crisis support. It has become a broader story about Europe's new security posture. A story echoed across the Atlantic as President Trump pushes NATO allies to spend more.
We were paying for almost all of NATO. Now they're paying 5 as opposed to not paying 2.
It's a wake-up call. The European people know that we will have to stand on our own feet.
And once again, like I just saw this article too, since they just showed Trump there, it just reminded me Trump is doing a shit as a horrible fucking job. He's making stupid decisions. Like that's when he was spoke on it.
What?
Basically, Trump opened sanctions again for Russia, which is gonna continue to enable Russia to finance its invasion of Ukraine. It says here in this video titled "How the War in Iran Benefits Russia Ukraine" this week. This was 8 hours ago, so that's why I personally speculate how this NATO is gonna end up betraying America because America is gonna be that fake ass friend that gets you into a knife fight and then runs and leaves you behind. This motherfucker's gonna start a fight with this group of dudes, and you're with your group of guys, and he's supposed to be leading you, but they got knives and shit. And then in the back, he's just being incompetent, and that's gonna leave NATO to join the other side and then attack that one man. That one man being America is gonna be America. Hence Revelation 17 and 16 once again. Revelation 17 and 16, it says, "And the beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire." 17, "For Yahweh has put in their hearts to accomplish his purpose by agreeing to hand over to the beast their royal authority until the powers of words are fulfilled. The woman you saw as America is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth." It says here on the down here. In the latest episode of Ukraine this week, Anna Belokar examines how the new war in the Middle East could strengthen Russia's ability to keep financing its invasion of Ukraine, as fighting between Iran, Israel, and the United States disrupts global oil supply. Prices have surged, giving Russia an opportunity to earn far more from energy exports. The episode explores how oil revenues fuel Russia's war economy, how sanctions have tried to limit that income, and while rising prices alongside Washington's easing of restrictions on Russian oil could undermine those efforts. Hence why this goes into Isaiah 19, verse 4, the crew of Lord. The crew of Lord right now is Donald Trump. And I'm going to play some of this video. This woman speaking here.
When war broke out in February between Iran, Israel, and the United States, many hoped that the conflict would deal a blow to Moscow's geopolitical influence. Iran, the country that gave Russia its first modern attack drones, was now under heavy bombardment itself, and wouldn't be of much use as a military or diplomatic ally for the foreseeable future. So on the surface, this new war seemed like a net negative for Moscow. But as days turn to weeks, it's becoming clear that Russia may actually emerge as one of the main beneficiaries of the new war in the Middle East. Why? Oil. I'm Anna Belliker, reporting to you from Kyiv, and this week we're going to take a look at how disrupted supply chains and soaring prices have catapulted Russia back to its status as a top oil exporter, with even Ukraine's allies rolling back sanctions on Russian oil in an attempt to fill the gap left by the now embattled Gulf states. Here in Ukraine, people are worried. Could this boost give Russia enough funds to keep waging war for years to come? Now, the first thing you need to know is that oil is a very volatile market. Every industrialized country needs a constant supply of oil, but not every country has oil fields to drill. Among those that have their own, there's competition to be the primary exporter to those that don't. When a country that exports oil is pushed off the market, whether due to sanctions or a disrupted supply chain, other oil-producing countries jump to fill the gap and reap the financial reward. And this means that the market can get shaken up basically overnight by a war or other major event, and an exporter's status can be turned upside down pretty unpredictably. But let's back up a bit and talk about what oil means specifically to Russia. It's hard to overstate just how much of 21st century Russia is built on oil and gas money. They have the 8th largest oil reserve in the world. They don't have a lot of other industries to export from when compared to other superpowers like China. And I'm not kidding when I say that almost all flashy Russian institutions are sponsored by state-owned oil and gas companies. There were zoning restrictions in St. Petersburg for centuries that said nothing could be built taller than the city's churches, but they made an exception for the Gazprom Tower, which is 3 times the height of the tallest cathedral where the Romanov family is buried. I'm telling you this to illustrate that for Russians, oil is both the lifeblood of the economy and a point of national pride that supersedes even religion. When you go after the Russian oil industry, you go after the Russian economy, and Russia takes that very seriously. When Russia launched the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, many countries reacted by swearing off or imposing sanctions on Russian resources. The sentiment was strong, but the results have been mixed. Even after years of sanctions and Western countries trying to move away from dependence on Russian resources, oil and gas have accounted for trillions of rubles in revenue to the Kremlin every year of its war. Some countries, including China, India, and Turkey, but also various nations in Europe, have continued to import Russian oil directly, while others have done so more underhandedly. Russia's used a network of inconspicuous shipping vessels flying foreign flags, known as the Shadow Fleet, to keep moving oil through waterways illegally throughout its invasion of Ukraine. But that's not to say that sanctions are completely ineffective. The Kremlin may still be collecting money on exports even while invading Ukraine, but its total oil and gas revenues fell 24% last year, to their lowest point since 2020. Countries that were still willing to buy oil from Russia paid significantly less than they otherwise might for it, which further reduced profits. Sanctions can genuinely chip away at the Russian war machine, although not cleanly or immediately. The lack of immediate effect from sanctions is also why Ukraine has made a practice of targeting Russia's refineries with drones. It breaks down the supply chain before the oil's even ready to export. But the idea is the same. To get at Russia, you have to get at Russia's oil. One sanction imposed or refinery destroyed isn't enough to force Russia's hand at the negotiating table. But in combination and over time, they chip away at Russia's economy and security, to the point where Moscow might be forced to question whether sustaining its war is the best way forward. Here to tell us a bit more about the role that oil plays in Russia's economy and geopolitics is economist Tim Ash. So, to start with, could you just briefly explain the role of oil in the Russian economy and how much of their war machine comes from oil money?
Russia is a commodity exporting country. I mean, typically oil and energy have accounted for something like 40% of exports and more or less the same in terms of budget receipts. But other commodities, metals, grain, I mean, they account for probably around another 40%. So it's a commodity-driven economy. Oil is it drives Russia basically.
But I mean, kind of with this new war, there's a lot of speculation about the state of the Russian economy after, years of their own invasion. Some say that they're really on the brink, others say that, it's more resilient of a market than expected. And as of early 2026, when this new war broke out, kind of like, where are we?
I think the reality is that we have to accept 4 years after the full-scale invasion. And remember, first imposition of sanctions were after Crimea, so in 2014. The Russian economy is still functioning. There's a lot of resilience there. And there's resilience because I describe it in two ways. One is the one person who knew the full-scale invasion was going to happen was Putin. He prepared for this. He built up resources, defenses. Russia had about 600 billion of foreign exchange reserves prior to the full-scale invasion. Russia deleveraged over the last decade. I always called it Fortress Russia economic policy settings. They ran very cautious policy, tight fiscal, tight monetary. I think because Putin knew he was going to do this, right, to reduce vulnerabilities to sanctions and all those kind of things. And the second thing is, we've not done enough in terms of sanctions. We've not been clever enough. We've been too slow, too predictable. We've allowed the Russians lots of ways to get around it. Secondary sanctions.
Right there, man. So he's just already telling you. They're telling you right there. That's just doing all right. They ain't been losing money. They really ain't been. Their economies really ain't been going down like that. And so America's looking real stupid right now if you're actually paying attention. Because they're actually going and buying from Russian oil right now. How are you going to buy from Russian oil? And it's like that's the enemy right now. It's fighting your buddy Ukraine. And you just stopped funding NATO right now too as well. Trump just signed a deal to stop funding so much of NATO, and he told them to start. They got to start spending their own economy to prep for war. So I'm gonna just go ahead and pull out Ezekiel 38. Since we're talking about the rest of them, this is Ezekiel 38, verse 7. Get ready to be prepared, for you and all the hordes gathered about you, and take command of them. Jumping down to verse 9. You and all your troops and many nations with you will go up, advancing like a storm. You will be like a cloud covering the land. And this hasn't happened to that level yet. It's gonna happen as the years keep passing, as this thing keeps escalating. I mean, they have it. They are coming in like a storm. You already saw a prelude to that. That's really just the prelude. It's not on that level yet. You think this is something, as they say. This is as they say. And I'm just seeing this video. So like, it's just so much happening. This is from 2 days ago. It's just basically going into Iran. It's warning Ukraine. So Iran might just end up now striking Ukraine as well. That's gonna help President Putin. So, and I believe, I speculate that's what's gonna happen too as well. Iran is gonna end up attacking Ukraine because Ukraine just got involved with deterring Iran. Iranian lawmaker Ibrahim Azizi warned on Saturday that Ukraine is now a legitimate target after President Zelensky sent experts to the Gulf to counter Iranian-made drones. Tehran says recent strikes on Israeli military intelligence sites avenge fallen commanders. Meanwhile, President Zelensky alleges Russia is supplying Iran with drones used to attack American bases in the region. Yeah, and I believe that. So that's proves that Russia's been involved. And then I got this article. China is eyeing an all-nuclear submarine fleets, while Japan follows suit. This was on Wednesday of last week. The Chinese Navy is moving toward an all-nuclear powered submarine fleet. U.S. naval officials say a monumental shift that will give ammunition to proponents of Japan developing its own nuclear subs. God.
Week. No one's gone to jail for breaking sanctions.
So that last article there, that was China going to war. I mean, yeah, China preparing for war as well. The U.S. Navy Intelligence Chief Rear Admiral Mike recently reviewed during a testimony before the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission that the Chinese Navy is executing a significant strategic shift from diesel-electric to all-nuclear construction, representing a fundamental departure from historical construction of its submarines. Plan, or otherwise known as China's People's Liberation Army Navy, already has one of the world's largest submarine fleets with more than 60 vessels, but this force is made up mostly of diesel-electric subs with at least 14 nuclear-powered vessels. According to Brooks, boosting the number of nuclear-powered vessels would allow the Chinese fleet to stay underwater for longer and operate farther ashore without surfacing. Brooks said by 2035, China could have up to 80 submarines with about half nuclear powered. Lord willing, we ain't here to 2035, but yeah.
It's paid to help Russia to break sanctions. So the second point. Now, all that said, there's a lot to suggest that some of those buffers have begun to be eroded away late 25 and into 26. I think Trump's sanctions on Lukoil and Rosneft had begun to make a difference. So you could see in, just last month, February, you look at the data, energy imports had dropped really significantly and energy production had dropped very significantly. Urals blend, the Russian main oil blend, was trading a really substantial discount to WTI and Brent.
Barrel. Now that means that if the market has stabilized...
Lord willing, this shit loads. I don't know why.
any given day, but in their 2026 budget, Moscow set the baseline for a barrel of Urals crude at $59 per barrel. Now that means that if the market has stabilized somewhere in the 80-something per barrel range, Russia is making between $20 and $30 more per barrel than they planned, which adds up to quite a lot of money over millions of barrels. Analysts estimate that around 15 million less barrels of oil are leaving the Gulf states per day than before the conflict started. And the longer it lasts, the more likely it is that that $80 per barrel range could move back up to even the $150 range. And this means Russia, now a much more reliable seeming option to buy from, stands to earn over 100% more per barrel of oil than it budgeted for. And that will pay for a lot of drones, a lot of bullets, a lot of weapons that will kill Ukrainians. There's a direct relationship between the price of oil per barrel and the amount of months Russia can continue to fight. And there's another element that matters for Ukraine. It's not just that Russia is strengthened, but also that Western allies are and will continue to be weakened. Countries that previously relied on imports from the Middle East are paying those new prices per barrel while facing domestic inflation, economic hardship, and all of the accompanying distress from their citizens. The market change that grinds down Western economies will boost Russia's, and Ukraine is bracing for its allies to turn inward towards their domestic problems in the coming months. Now, let me linger for a moment on those last few words, in the coming months, because I'm using it mainly as a figure of speech to mean in the near, semi-foreseeable future. But that lack of preciseness touches on a complicated element of this story that I struggled with while writing the script. Because all of these moving pieces, the price per barrel, the sanctions, have wildly different implications for Ukraine if the war in the Middle East lasts days versus months versus years, and we're getting bipolar predictions on that front from even officials of the same countries. Starting last week, US officials began floating the idea of easing sanctions on Russian oil, a day after Washington issued a 30-day waiver allowing Russian crude oil, stranded at sea, to continue sailing to India. Now this comes after months of the US pressuring India to wean itself from Russian oil or be sanctioned, so the decision by the US marked a sharp about turn. US President Trump argues that America has to reverse sanctions on Russia until the strait is up, because he's ever a New Yorker in his phrasing, but he also said that the conflict is almost over. His exact words were actually, "It's very complete." Now, on the other hand, his Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who one would think would be on the same page as his president, told reporters on Wednesday that America has just begun to hunt. In a move that everyone here in Ukraine found bitterly ironic, the US even referred to the conflict as a special military operation. We all know that those can go on indefinitely. But from the point of realism, Ukraine knows that a Trump deadline should be taken with a grain of salt. We're likely looking at a minimum of months, not weeks, before there's peace in the Middle East. Ukrainians don't share Trump's confidence that removing sanctions on Russia will just be some temporary measure to smooth things out. It has the potential to become a long-term savior of the Russian war machine. The diplomatic contradiction here is obvious. For months, Trump has
Это не пойдет, это не как Хамини. Росії це погано. Це дуже погано. Тому що
and the sporadic rollout has exposed his hesitance. And now the scant pressure that's been created is erased. Russia's getting the message that sanctions will be upheld until the moment they become inconvenient to uphold, which ignores the fact that sanctions should, by their very nature, be inconvenient. So how do everyday Ukrainians feel about the idea of America undoing the progress it's made in peace talks? We decided to find out.
Старий світовий порядок і як то безпекова система абсолютно рухнула, тобто вона і так тріщала по всіх швах, але зараз вона просто рухнула, то і хто Трамп це зробив, в принципі, і всі такі. Чого так от просто дивляться в сторону, не знаю, куди це приведе. Якщо ми беремо тільки санкції, то тільки зараз, а вже ж це, типу, їм тільки в плюс, Путін виграші, типу, абсолютно. Тут ні про що говорити, більше грошей, більше можливостей бомбити нас і фінансувати війну проти України.
я вважаю, що давно потрібно Америці і Трампу зосередитись або на допомозі України, або відверто сказати, що він на боці Росії. Ну і все. Те, що це однозначно впливає на економічні процеси в світі, це 100%, але я як житель і мешканець нашої країни переймаюся в першу чергу за Україну. І мені хотілося б, щоб допомагали в першу чергу нам санкціями, зброєю чи будь-якими іншими способами байдуже.
Зараз за рахунок того, що на Сході розвивається дуже сильна війна, да, як і Іран, і Ізраїль, вони дуже сильно...
Alright, Constance, there you have it, man. These Ukrainians, they're just saying, if you're paying attention to the video, they're saying that Trump is like stupid, like he's making stupid. That's a stupid decision he made.
Це відволікає увагу від України, і нам перестають давати поставки. І ще цей Трамп робить просто неможливі речі. Я просто розумію, що Трамп путініст, і для нас це погано. Що я можу сказати? Але ми переможемо.
Санкції зняти з Росії – це погано. Це дуже погано. Тому що ці гроші будуть йти на вооруження.
Money will go toward army, not Russia, basically, is what the point is there. I'm gonna play a bit more of this. Going back to Sweden is becoming a defense powerhouse. As Europe rearms, on.
Own feet. Be more independent.
Anders Fogh Rasmussen is the former NATO Secretary General and Prime Minister of Denmark.
For too long, have to stand on our own feet. Be more independent.
Anders Fogh Rasmussen is the former NATO Secretary General and Prime Minister of Denmark.
For too long, we have relied on a combination of cheap energy from Russia, cheap goods from China, and cheap security from the United States. That model doesn't work any longer. Now we have to stand on our own feet. We need to shift gear. We will need to make Europe a defense superpower.
But not every country is willing or able, according to economist Jacob Kierkegaard, a senior fellow at Brussels-based think tank Bruegel.
I know we say that, Europe is rearming, but the reality is that Europe as a whole is not rearming. There is a limited number of countries that rearm. That includes at least two big ones. First and foremost, of course, Germany, the other one being Poland, and then a number of smaller countries, particularly in Scandinavia and other parts of Eastern Europe. And these are countries that actually do have, if you like, latent fiscal capacity. Germany, again, being the case in point. And therefore, there is a self-selection. The countries that can have both guns and butter, well, they're rearming. But those that have to choose, and by that I mean France, Italy, Spain, the UK, they are much more hesitant when it comes to significantly increasing defense expenditures.
Defense has the potential to become a stronger economic driver across Europe. The EU is targeting 50% of defense procurement to be from EU suppliers by 2030, a meaningful shift considering that after Russia's invasion, that number was roughly 25%. But meeting that goal requires production capacity, and that's where Sweden stands out. It has maintained that production capacity for the better part of a century, in part because it historically relied more on exports than other European manufacturers, and that continuity matters. There's a, I would say, dramatic ramp up into spending right now, but there were years where there was not as much attention or investment in Europe in defense. How did Saab maintain its investments?
We have never sort of dismantled sort of everything as you are alluding to within our company, and that goes back to our ownership. I think even though we are a stock exchange company, publicly listed, we have a strong owner in the Wallenberg family. And they have always been long-term and also very loyal to sort of the deterrence and defense of Sweden for many, many decades. And so we never dismantled. We continuously invested more on our own, I would say, when sort of the government didn't sort of fund everything that we wanted them to fund. And we have always been a company that takes sort of a lot of our top line and our bottom line, for that sake, to reinvest in R&D, to always be relevant in the short time frame, but also long term. So we are a bit unique in that sense, I think, not only looking at relying upon governments all the time to keep our operations efficient and state of the art.
Sweden has been ready to step up on defense, and its entry into NATO in 2024 sealed the deal. As you described, Russia's invasion of Ukraine triggered an awful lot within the defense industry. It also was a wake-up call for Sweden as Sweden joined NATO. How has that affected Saab's business, if at all? Sweden's being in NATO now.
For the company, I would say all of a sudden we are involved in the common acquisitions that NATO is doing now and then to create that strong defense. But that was a strange discussion about this type of business. We're not sort of just.
Once again, Joel 3 at 9 to 10. This is Obadiah 1 in verse 1. The vision of Obadiah, thus says Yahweh Bashem Messiah, power concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor. Edom is so-called white man in America. We have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. That's what the Lord is preparing right now. The Lord Yahweh is preparing this war right now. That's Psalm 46 and 7. The Lord of hosts is with us. The power of Jacob is our refuge. Selah. Yeah, and in that time when this war, third war comes, the Lord is going to be our refuge. We're going to rely on the Lord. It says, come behold the works of the Yahweh, what desolations he hath made in the earth. He maketh wars to cease unto the end of the earth. He breaketh the bow and cutteth the spear in sunder. He burneth the chariot in the fire. Be still and know that I am the power. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. That's going to be happen right after this battle is over. The battle Armageddon, which is what's going to end the war. And ultimately, every single war. There's never going to be. In verse 9 there, it says the Lord is going to has the power to make wars to cease. You had that in the time of Solomon. There wasn't any war in the time of Solomon. And this is jumping down to verse 11. The Lord of hosts is with us. The power of Jacob, once again, as it says, is our refuge. Selah. I said that in verse 7 as well. And I'm going to jump back to verse 1. Psalm 46 and 1. God, your power, Yahweh, is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth be removed. The earth is going to be removed due to this third war. It's going to happen. And though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea. The mountains are going into kingdoms here. That's why Yahweh said, if thou have faith as mustard seed, you should move, say to this mountain, move, and it shall move. And that's basically a metaphor for representing the elect, the prophesying, and believing in the destruction of this kingdom, when Yahweh said that. And though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea. Essentially, basically, that's all you need to know. I mean, we look at the news and stuff as well, and you may look all into that, but You really don't even need all that. I mean, you should look at it, especially if you're a prophet and you're teaching, but you really don't even need all that. You don't really need to know how many ships China has, how many ships Taiwan has, how many aircraft carriers China's planning to have all in a heartbeat and memorizing all those intricacies. If you can, you can. But ultimately, the main thing is that it's scriptures because the scriptures saying it's gonna happen, and then by faith, all you need a faith. Along with faith, that's all you really need. This is Isaiah 46:2. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth will be read that in verse 3. Though the waters thereof roar, and the waters goes into the people and be troubled, though the people are because the people are going to be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof. It's Allah, because of the rockets and all the missiles that's going to be shot, it's going to move the waters, basically trouble these people, take their life. In verse 5, Yahweh is in the midst of her. He's in the midst of the earth, this truth. She shall not be moved. Yeah, the earth is not going to be destroyed. Ultimately, Israel won't be destroyed. Yahweh shall help her in that right early. Yahweh ultimately, Yahweh knows the exact time and the date of when he's going to come. When is the perfect time when he's going to come. 6, the heathen raised. The heathen raising right now, having all these plans and talking all this proud stuff. The kingdoms were moved. Yup, they are. And he uttered his voice. The Lord is going to utter his voice. Kingdoms are going to be moved by this third war. The earth melted. The earth melted. That's the missiles right there. The earth's melting. Yahweh Shemashai is going to make this happen. And then they're going to have to come out with the chip as well, a microchip. This is 2 Chronicles 15, starting at 3. For a long time, Israel had not sought the one true Yahweh, that's our people today, or a priest to instruct them, or the law. But as you still have this word coming out, you can still get this instruction, verse 4. Because of their distress, they turned back to the Lord Yahweh of Israel. They sought him, and he responded to them. 5. In those days, no one could travel safely. Yeah, so when this third war happens, more of the elect, hopefully, elect is gonna wake up. I still believe there's some of the elect that ain't woken up out there. This is verse 5. In those days, no one could travel safely, for total chaos had overtaken all the people of the surrounding lands. 6. One nation was crushed by another, and one city by another. For Yahweh caused them to be in great turmoil, and that's how this third war is going to be. One nation crushed another, one city by another. And then you're seeing this happening over there right now in those other countries across the sea right now. Tel Aviv and Qatar, I think. Iran, certain parts of Iran is being hit right now. In those days, no one could travel safely, and that's how it's going to be. No one's going to travel safely out here. And people don't even know that Esau ain't going to be looking out for them because he's going to have these people fucked up in those detention centers. It's going to look like that's the first place people are going to go because that's where they're going to think that help is going to be. But really, in those detention centers, they're just going to be keeping you in the prison basically and making you work as well. His brother had a dream about that too. How he was forced and locked inside this big ass warehouse where he was kept to work in there. In those days, no one could travel safely for total because no one could travel safely, for total chaos had overtaken all the people of the surrounding lands. This war is gonna escalate to everywhere. They're even gonna be shooting missiles in Mexico, man. Parts of Mexico, parts of Brazil, man. So it don't matter where you go. This is what's gonna happen, and then over there, because of this war, there's shit over the economy over there is gonna be all fucked up either way. Even if those certain places are more safe for missiles, their economy over there is gonna be so fucked up. People ain't gonna be working. The energy is gonna be going out as well because most of their energy supply here from America, most of their water as well, and so that shit's gonna be turned off. So I'll play some more of this video and then look at this. You got a protest right now in Cuba, uproars of the people. Brother posted this video, just clip the photo. Shows you these Americans, young Americans here getting drafted. All males 18 to 27 must report.
Sustainable, and investors wouldn't get an eco-label sort of stamp on their funds if they invested in defense. That, of course, sort of disappeared more or less completely, not all of it, but lots of it when the war broke out and we realized that we had to catch up. So, I mean, if you look at Saab, I think we were 45,000 shareholders before the war broke out, and we are 300,000 shareholders as we speak. So it's been a big change in the perception.
And it isn't just Saab shareholders who are backing the ramp up in defense production. The Swedish government is right there with them, as explained by Finance Minister Elisabeth Svantesson.
It is definitely a boost in the economy. We have 6% this year of GDP in different public investments. I think we are in the top in the EU. And of course, defense spending is one of the big investments. And we have this defense industry, it's strong. So that's important. And what I think a lot about is how could we do that? I mean, this will change the labor market, the economy. How can we have the synergy effects, and how can this will affect the labor market, the economy? How can we do it in the best way? Innovation, technique development, and so on. I mean, we are raising double defense spending just now, and it will be more. That in itself is helping, because much of what will be produced in Sweden or in Europe, of course, and so we are helping that way.
But not all European financial institutions are as supportive of the move into defense spending, especially when it comes to multilateral lenders like the European Investment Bank.
I think much too little has been done. I know that the European leaders, when they meet in their biannual or every quarter, every time they usually have a sentence that says, "Oh, the EIB and other multilateral lenders should do more." But we're 4 years into this war, and the direct funding, for instance, from the EIB and other multilateral lenders to European defense is very limited. The direct involvement also of, say, European pension funds remain very limited. And I think that is, quite frankly, a clear policy failure and what I would call initial executive institutional inertia. You have not had leaders in these institutions, both the policy institutions and the private sector institutions, to basically push this. I think it's a mistake, but it obviously hasn't prevented private capital, venture funding and others from flowing into the sector. And with the equity valuations increases that we have seen, the increase in European funding, venture capital funding in the sector as well, but it has been largely despite the traditional pillars of the European financial system, in the large banks, in the pension funds, and in the policy lending institutions of the European Union.
And that may be an important reason why Sweden is punching above its weight when it comes to defense. A combination of being prepared, having the support of investors, and recognizing an urgent need. When you think
So, okay, so really that's the point. I'm gonna just Google this real quick. So I Google, is Trump still funding NATO military? Yes, the United States under the second Trump administration continues to fund NATO military efforts, but with a focus on enforcing significantly higher financial contributions from European allies and Canada. Yeah. Following the 2025 NATO summit, allies committed to a historic increase in defense spending aimed at a 5% of GDP target, up from the previous 2% guideline. Key aspects in the current situation as of early 2026: continued funding and pressure. Trump has stated that he is not sure that U.S. should be spending anything on NATO, but his administration's goal is to compel other nations to pay more. The 5% goal. Trump pressured allies to increase their defense spending to 5% of their GDP. Shift in burden. While the U.S. remains the largest contributor, NATO members are paying more of their own bills to increase collective deterrence against threats. So that's the point. Shalom and the barber bar.